It was a normal day in Dragonlance. Garble was hanging out with some of his friends and models nearby lava lakes just to relax, but he was even more excited to see his younger sister Smolder. He has been so excited to see her after her last visit when he had helped the other dragons to hatch the eggs. But he also even now has been a good friend to Spike. But he was so excited to see his sister ever again. But over from time to time now, he wonders what else can he do in his life. Ever since his parents has kicked him out from their family home since he reached the mold effect age. Even some of the other of his friends has been around some other female dragons of the same age as them, and some of them have been start dating or at least hanging out with some of the female dragons. Two of his best friends had actually been seeing and dating this particular one dragon of the his like, and even got married. And now Smolder had wondered if Garble was ready to get married. But Garble had always said, "No, I'm not ready for marriage yet. Still young. I need still maybe the next 30 years or so, or perhaps over the next century." But he also often had wondered if he would maybe get married or have a family of his own. But one day when his sister came over for a visit, he was so excited to see her. And they all had a great time, diving in the lava lakes, swimming in the lava lakes, or even listening to his poems. But one day though, when she had to go back home, back to Ponyville, she had invited him that so he could go over to see her in Ponyville. At first, he was a little bit hesitated because most dragons didn't leave their homes as often, but he considered that. So, and within a few months later, Garble had written back to Smolder that he is coming over for a visit, and that made her so excited. So she wanted to show him a lot of things that she had been learned about the pony ways, or at least show some things that they can maybe have something is common sense. Even though then, when Smolder showed Garble around in Ponyville, like what kind of food they have or music, but there was one thing that he was really interested most. During the comic club's visits, he often saw there was a performance and even poets, some of the poets when they performed. And even Smolder tried to convince them, tried to at least perform one of his own poems. At first, he was very much hesitated of this, but after much convincing of Smolder, he tried. And very much surprising, ponies in town actually enjoyed his poets. And his poetry was so a good hit in the Ponyville so that he decided maybe what about he wrote down some of his poetry and published as a book in Ponyville or anywhere in Equestria. So he did. But he needed some help though. And that he made with help from Smolder and Spike. But only about 6 months after this book was published. He was sitting by himself in the Dragonlands, just sitting near a lake, just talking to himself and based on trying to make up some new poetry, when he heard a voice behind his back. He turned around and saw this blue young female dragon around the same age as him, and her name was Frazzle. Frazzle had been living in Dragonlance for almost 10 years. She had moved from another part of Dragonlance to be part of where he lived. And she asked but before anything happened, he became silent. and she asked him if she could hear more about his poetry. And he smiled and said yes, and she sat down next to him and he started to bongo on his bongo drums and made some more poetry. And for some reason, she actually enjoyed this poetry. And she even said that he was a very talented as a poet. And asked, have you published or anything like that? And it turns out that Frazzle was a friendly dragon. And she had been traveling around in Equestria and learned some other poetry from other ponies, griffins, and other things. And he said that he had actually published a book about some dragon poetry, and she would like to maybe hear some of them. So he actually then told her to go with him to his cave nearby where he stayed, and he showed the book. And the book, he then started reading the poetry for her, and she listened. And they actually, after he had finished with the poetry book, they start talking, and they talked the entire day, and they didn't realize it. When they were finished, it was midnight. It was almost like midnight when they suddenly stopped and they realized it. Oh, it's midnight already, he said. Yeah, it is. Oh, probably should go trying to get some sleep by then. Can I see you tomorrow? She said. Uh, yeah, I think so. We can maybe hang out at the lake. And she smiled and just left. Garble lied in his bed in his cave and just wondered, what is just going on here? Who is this Frazzle? And do I like her? Or just like her as a friend? Or like her? But he couldn't even ask himself, he couldn't even answer that. So the next day, he actually went to see her at the lake. She was already there, swimming around the lake, just waiting for him. And they actually had a great time. When suddenly, after almost for about 3 hours of swimming around in the lake, they actually got hungry. So Garble decided to take her to a nearby place where they had these amazing gems. He knew one great place. He started digging and starting to find a lot of gemstones. And she asked him a little bit about himself, and he started telling about that he was young, like many other dragons, kicked out of his family, has a younger sister by name Smolder, who lives in Ponyville. And then Frazzle mentioned that she had been in Ponyville at least twice before. But that was probably before Smolder even started in school. And he asked her, where else hadn't she been? She told Garble that she had been traveling around in Equestria and maybe all that for several years until she moved back to Dragonlance. Her parents were often traveling around mostly by themselves to Griffithstone area or perhaps even to Yakistan, which they often did. So he then asked her about more about her travels, like what she liked to do, what have seen in there, and he was actually listening carefully when she explained all things that she had seen. But after time, they decided maybe it was time to do something else because they were getting bored of just sitting there having lunch together. So Garble asked if she maybe would like to do maybe lava surfing, and she just smiled and said yes, that was something actually her favorite sport. So they went to this lava waterfall nearby, and they actually carve out stones at the surfboard and start surfing lying down from the lava fall and through the lake, and did that over and over almost for 3 hours. And they could never really get tired from it. They had this amazing time. They had they realized they had so much in common, like the same food, well, except for they only eat that, and they like the same thing like windsurfing or lava surfing and just even enjoy poetry. But there was one thing though. Would she be able to be interested to be with him in the first place, or more as a friend? But after some time, after the one that day, he decided maybe that he could just ask her, or perhaps want to ask something else. But before then, he decided to go see his sister in Portugal, as her or Spike for advice, because some of his friends had already found some dragon to be with, but he wanted their outputs, their opinions. So when he went there by surprise, Smolder was really quickly surprised to see her older brother being there. But they have a quick chat. Then she asked him why he suddenly visits her by random chance, and he explained why. So she then told maybe they need Spike for a second opinion. So after Spike was really briefly by informed by Smolder what's going on, so Spike Smolder went to see Garble outside town, where they all talked. They both listened to about what happened to Garble lately, and even Smolder started smiling and said, "You sound like you're in love with Garble." That made him realize it though, but I don't know if she likes me the same way. I mean, we have a lot of comment, and but Spike then said, "Listen, if you really are much interested in this Frazzle, and she said, maybe you should try to maybe tell her that, or at least maybe try to win her heart in some way." "How?" he asked. "Well, the ponies are often doing it with music or dance or basically anything to win her heart. Gifts?" "Hmm. Well, I could give her maybe some gemstones or maybe do with some poetry just for her." And Smolder said, "That can actually work," she said. And after they talked a little bit more, Garble decided to go back home. And thankfully for Spike and Smolder listened and some of the advice. But when he came back home, he started to look around for Frazzle but couldn't find her. But then he asked some of his friends, and then he said that she was away for a couple of days because she was going to see her mother, who lives a little bit distant, far away. So he did. So then would give him enough time to make some new poetry. But when she came back, though, she was just happy to see Garble as always, but he didn't tell about this poetry right away because she Garble wanted to make it as a big surprise, but he wasn't even finished yet. He needed maybe 1 or 2 days more just to complete it. There were some setbacks of how to make the poetry, but when he was finished, he weren't about to look for her, and he then saw her with another male dragon, someone he knew, and they both laughed and they just gave each other a high five and just talked. So he thought maybe nothing was going on between them. But when he then saw that they gave each other a hug, which didn't seem to be any wrong with that, but later he actually went up to her and asked if she would like to hear some new poetry that he made. But he didn't mention that it was about her, so he kept that part a secret, and she said yes. So she sat down and he started banging on the drums and started his poetry. And she listened carefully. And after he was finished, he asked her what her opinion about it. If she liked it or hated it or did it to be fixed, even perhaps even better. But she said it was perfect as it is. And then he decided to tell her the reason about the meaning about it. And she was not prepared for it. She said that she was actually surprised, but she actually enjoyed the gift. And for some reason, Smolder which had told Garble before he left, "Give her the gift and let's see what it goes for. Let it go from there." So he decided to give her some of the gemstones for the gift, which she enjoyed right away though. Then he asked her if she maybe wanted to be his girlfriend or something, or maybe just see where if they can go from that part. So, but she said that she needs some time to think, which he would glad to give her as much time she needed. So within a couple of days after, she went up to his cave and they talked. And then she said that she would like to be his girlfriend. And they start dating this. They even both together went to see Smolder in Pulneville from time to time. And from what Smolder can be told by first visit by them together, she was just happy that Garble had actually found another dragon to be with, especially some dragon that made him so happy. And within another 2 years that passed, Garble mentioned to his sister, or by letter, that he's coming over by himself. And when she read it, she was worried if something was going on. Because normally, both Garble and Frazzle are going over to see her. But this was actually the first time over 2 years that he will be alone. So, she was worried that maybe their relationship had broken up and that she had moved on and that he was feeling heartbroken and that he needed some comfort from his sister. But when he got there, he had something else to tell her. And it turns out, during the full moon that was 2 months prior, he had actually got engaged with Frazzle. That was something that Smolder did not expect. But she was really happy for him. And even Spike was told about it. He was very happy for him. And also curious, will it be like a dragon wedding, or because he has never been to a dragon wedding, or at least never knew how true dragons end up being as a couple, like married ones. And Smolder explained some of the details how it happened. And Spike then asked if Frazzle and Garble would like maybe to have preferred something else. Maybe have a dragon wedding in Ponyville, or perhaps maybe having a pony wedding. And Garble were not so sure about that idea, but he would probably ask Frazzle about it. So when he went back to Dragonlance, he told Frazzle about the idea that Spike and his sister had told him about. And she was actually not much against the idea. So the next time when they both went to Pulneville, they told Smolder and Spike directly that they would like to have a pony weddings, even when they invite some of their friends though, which Smolder and Spike wouldn't have much against. So within the next year, Smolder had started invited some friends from Dragonlance and even some pony friends and some others to the wedding in Ponyville. And it was an unusual, unique wedding though. Two dragons having a pony wedding. But when Smolder saw her older brother standing at the altar in the suit, he was just hands on what she said. And he had even picked Spike as his best man. And Smolder was asked to be Frazzle's bridesmaid. But when he saw Frazzle in the wedding dress walking up the aisle, it was like his feet got cold. But Spike, he actually did say to him, "Garble, don't freak out and be calm. Everything will go well, fine, you. Are you sure, Spike? He asked. Listen, you love her, right? Yeah, I do. As then Lady saw when the exact then same moment when Frazzle walked in. She is so beautiful. Garble tried to act normally, and first of all, don't freak out. It will be just fine, trust me. This is not my first wedding I've been to. And after that, Twilight actually was the one to perform the ceremony. And even after all of this, they actually had this amazing party at the castle. And of course, before after they had said I do, Rainbow made a sonic rainbow, which both of them were really surprised to see. But at the party though, both had this amazing time, dancing around, having great food, and even enjoying the company of their friends and family. Even though that Smolder's parents had kicked their son out years ago, but they were still invited to the wedding, and they actually had a great time. Get to know Fast a little bit better, and for some reason though, even Frazzle's parents had been invited. They actually met Garble only a year earlier, before they had decided to make this wedding. Well, this was actually the very first meeting the Garble's parents had met Frazzle. He was very much unsure if he would let them to meet Frazzle before all of this happened. But at least they were happy and supportive about his marriage to Frazzle. But since Spike did not ask Garble where they're going to have their honeymoon, both Frazzle and Garble said court in Dragonlands, of course, but in more more distant place where it has more lava lakes and some great gemstones finds area, which they actually did. They spent about a month on their honeymoon, and they had some amazing time. But after 4 years of being married, Frazzle mentioned to Garble one day that she was going to have a baby, and he was so excited. When even he told Smolder, she was so happy to be an aunt soon. And within a few months, she laid an egg. And a couple of weeks later, the egg hatched and they had a boy. Garble could not be more proud to be a father to a boy, and they had even made Spike as his godfather. But within 5 years, though, Frazzle had another egg, and it later turned out to be a daughter. Both Garble and Frazzle could not have been happier to be with each other. This was some unique marriage, and also a very unique relationship between two dragons. Normally, there wouldn't have been like this for any dragons, according to Smolder, the Spike, because dragon weddings were not like the as ponies did. They didn't have any particular wedding ceremony or any rings or something. They just grab each other's arms and swing around in the air, make some fire, and it was done. And they decided to live in one place together, either a cave or a big nest they built, and later had eggs. And as they did to Smolder's brother Garble, kicked them out when they reached mold effect. But this was the actually very first in many generations. Smolder's brother never kicked out his own children when they reached the mold effect. He had actually broken that particular tradition for after so many generations. But Frazzle, she was not much against that idea either. They both actually very much want to break a new tradition, and try to make a new tradition, and try to make the entire dragon society like almost like ponies, a bit for bit. And that's how Smolder's brother Garble and Frazzle were a true love and got a big family. The end.